Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Born Podcast, brought to you from our studio here in central Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Nathan Imboden, and on this podcast, we get to bring in local business owners and leaders, typically learning all about how they started, grow, and are running their successful organizations. Today, we're doing the same thing, but with a little bit of a different twist, and we'll get to that in a minute. You can find a full replay of our broadcast when you go to thebornpodcast.com. And you can also find us on pretty much any social media channel that you want, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or any podcast app. Search for The Born Podcast. Hit that like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all these interviews that we get to do. And I mentioned we're doing a little bit of a different flair today because we have the man, the myth, and in person, the legend, Mr. Paul Beardmore, who is the Vice President of Educational Programs at affectionately known as CSAG, but the Christian School Association of Greater Harrisburg, which I got that all right. It can be a tongue tire sometimes. But Paul, awesome to have you here. Thanks for joining us on the show.
So thankful to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
So give our listeners just a little bit of a background on Paul.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll start with you. You're the face, you're here, so let's start with you.
Wow, yeah. So I was born and raised in central Pennsylvania. Met my wife at West Shore Christian Academy, which we'll talk about in a minute, and graduated, stayed in the area, went to Shippensburg University, and then got into education and was a high school teacher of history and economics for 7 years. Got called back to teach at West Shore Christian Academy. And then from there, I've kind of worked my way up to principal and now vice president. My wife and I have 3 boys that keep us busy.
Yeah, they do. What was the pivot from moving away from the teaching aspect of education to more administration in the education world?
Yeah. I don't know how many business leaders can resonate with this, but I literally said I will never become an administrator. Like I'll never become a supervisor. I'll always be a teacher. And of course that didn't happen. I did become one. I really would say the pivot was need.
Yeah.
I was a teacher at West Shore Christian. I saw the need that we needed a principal. I was part of an interview team interviewing a potential principal, and I really saw like this call of, hey, I could do this. I could really give back to the faculty, my colleagues, by taking this position on. I could give back to the parents. I could even give back to my own family because my sons at that point were starting to go to school at West Shore. And so stepped in where I saw a need, and the rest is history.
Yeah. This isn't normally we get into, but I'm curious. Which have you preferred thus far?
Teaching versus administrating?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. Again, I never would have thought I would be saying what I'm saying, but I really do love leadership as much or not more as I did teaching.
Yeah.
I love the opportunities that leadership gives you to serve people and to get to know people. And I really understand more now. I truly love doing that. And it's big people if you're in administration, it's smaller people if you're teaching, but it's still people.
Still people. Yeah.
So I really appreciate the opportunity that leadership has given me to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to dig into a little bit of that maybe on the personal side, but talk a little bit about the schools and now schools, but at one point it was schools separate and now it's schools combined, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about maybe the history of the schools and CSAG.
Yeah. So CSAG is very unique in Christian education and really in schools in general, in the fact that it's an association of 2 schools.
Okay.
So it's 2 K-12 schools, West Shore Christian Academy in Mechanicsburg area in Pennsylvania, and then Harrisburg Christian School right outside of Harrisburg in Linglestown. And those 2 Christian schools have a long history. They've both been around for well over 50 years. But they were separated, 2 K-12 schools operating until 2017. And in January 1st of 2017, Harrisburg Christian acquired West Shore Christian Academy. And Harrisburg Christian had always had their doing business name as Harrisburg Christian, but they always had their legal name was this CSAG, this Christian School Association of Greater Harrisburg. When they became two schools, they really brought that CSAG to the forefront of the name. And now we're two schools operating under that one umbrella. So we have the same policies, one president, one vice president, one school board that runs both schools. But it's two distinct schools.
Right.
Mascots, brands, they compete against each other.
Yeah.
All of that. So it's a unique model.
Interesting. Is there any thought of adding other schools underneath that model?
I think so. I would say that that's not in the current strategic plan of like, hey, next 3 years we're looking to add this school or that school, but we are always open to opportunities, and we're always open to the fact that we want Christian education to be sustainable for generations and not just for 10 or 20 years. I'm a product of Christian education. My boys are now second generation. I want Christian education in central Pennsylvania for their kids and their kids, And so if that means adding more schools to strengthen us as an association or to strengthen other schools or to do Christian education better in central Pennsylvania, we are definitely all for that.
Okay. And what did you see that wasn't working well maybe before the actual merger that became more of a cohesive group compared to what it is now?
That's a great question. I think there's a number of things that has really strengthened over the years of being together. I think there's efficiencies that are developed. You have one business office, you have one president, you have one school board. There's efficiency in that, both financially and from the standpoint of donor identification and development, policy development, things like that. But you also have like competency development too in that, as far as you're able to have, a CFO level, you're able to have executive level, you're able to have a school board that takes the best of the best and really put together teams of people, the teachers. Now, instead of, 2 or 3 history teachers in a department, now it's 5 to 6 teachers in a department, and iron sharpening iron in bigger groups. So at every level, I think you get better competency, better efficiency, and certainly financial stability. So from the two schools coming together in 2017, both schools are in much stronger financial position than they were in 2017.
Interesting. I mean, it's a interesting model, and there's other topics that we could go down many rabbit holes with in terms of education at large. And there's certainly sitting as we are today, a couple weeks out from an election result, and education is a big topic right now in some of the campaigning and that things are coming out. So maybe to be determined on what some of that stuff looks like. Obviously, being in the private Christian school side of the house, there is an affinity towards that as an opportunity in education for kids and families alike. So what do you think makes it appealing for families to want to be a part of CSAG, whether it's Harrisburg Christian or West Shore Christian Academy?
I think there's a number of things that we hear from our parents that make this choice an attractive one for them. I think first and foremost, they understand that we are a Christian school and we partner with Christian families. And if they want that for their child, of I want somebody in their life that is impacting them at a spiritual level. I want someone in their life that loves Jesus. I love Jesus, and I want that surrounding atmosphere for my child. I would say that's first and foremost. But there's so many other benefits that comes with that. I mean, you have a community environment where we feel like kids are known and they know others, and the parents know the other children, all the teachers know the other children. And so there's definitely a community aspect where we spend time together in ways that some other schools don't spend time together.
Yeah.
We have a community picnic to launch the year. We have worship nights as a community. We have people coming out to see other people's kids play sports just because we're close friends or we kind of adopt them or, all of those things. And that's just very unique. And I think very attractive in a society that is increasingly seeing the need for their kids to be in places where they feel belonging and they feel community and they feel supported as people and individuals rather than like a number.
Yeah.
I think all of those factors. And then I would say the last thing is just the quality of education that they receive or the quality of the extracurriculars. I think maybe there's a stereotype that you have to sacrifice those things by coming to a Christian school. And when our parents see that their kids are able to participate in quality athletics and maybe even do more than one sport,
right?
And they don't have to focus on one. They can do several. They can still do a really quality musical production. They can still do quality orchestra and bands experiences. They can still, have a quality education when it comes to dual enrollment college opportunities or all of these things. Our SAT scores are still really competitive. When they see, I don't have to sacrifice those things to get Christian education, that's very attractive, to people.
Well, on some level, people may think that normally listen or watch this podcast, well, what's a Christian school or a Christian school association doing an entrepreneurship podcast? But one of these you just said, I think highlights why. I mean, running a school, starting, building, and running a school has to be looked at in part as a business because you 100%. Have to stay competitive. You have to stay relevant. You just mentioned if you don't have quality education, athletic opportunities, extracurricular opportunities, all these other things that make you not just similar but even different than other educational opportunities, and at the same time do it in a way that helps advance those kids forward. You don't grow your enrollment. You don't bring more families in. You lose your impact. And doing that means more staff, better fiscal. You have larger budgets that you have to manage well. You have new buildings that you got to deal with. All those kinds of things that go into truly building a school, and doing it. If this is the right way to say it, I'll let you say it. Doing it on the backs of, so to speak, private donors and your families. It is a tough go in the private space because we don't get the same access to dollars that other schools do. So there's a very clear business aspect to this, and
Absolutely.
It's been cool to see the school over the years develop and what it's become. But how do you feel like your connection, because you went to the school and now being on this side of it, do you feel like that plays any part in your just heart for the school or the impact that you're able to bring to the culture of the organization?
Absolutely. I mean, and I just to make the connection again, I think the connection is very strong to business. We have to run the schools well. We talk a lot about stewardship and being good stewards of the finances and the resources we have, because that's what we've been entrusted with from our customers, our parents. And we have to make sure we're doing that super well and in a lot of ways more efficiently than our public school competitors in the public sector, because we don't have the funding sources they have. And so we have to make every dollar count. And we talk about things like scaling, and we talk about things like, HR, practices and policies, et cetera. I mean, we are running an organization with over 100 employees, and that has challenges to it, and we have to make sure we're doing that well. So all those things, absolutely. And then as far as my connection, even personally, I think many entrepreneurs or business owners can appreciate that I have a personal investment in the organization in a sense that someone else may not have. I have my wife and I are alum. Our 3 boys are in there. So I have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And so in one sense, every day I'm fighting for much more than just the school. I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting for my boys' education. I'm fighting for their friends' education. I'm fighting for our community's education. And we have alum at both schools that are employed by us now. And so in that way, we're a family business in the sense like we all have this skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no sense in which, yeah, like this is something I'm dabbling in and I hope it works out. It's like, no, we're all in.
Yeah.
You know, we're the family business, and if this fails, we've failed.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're grinding. So yeah, I think that connection is definitely there.
You said a couple things in the last 2 remarks that I'll reference another. It's a learning center, not a school officially, but there's a pastor locally. I don't know if you know the gentleman, Pastor Josh Robertson, running a great
Josh.
learning center, the Rock City Learning Center down in Harrisburg, right in Allison Hill, so serving the kids that need it most. And he hosted a town hall recently, and he's talked about his learning center, and I will connect it back to CSAG, but his it started because there were families in his community during COVID that were calling saying, "Hey, can you help us out? We got thrust into this virtual learning environment. We don't have great systems. My kid's not doing well. Can you do anything?" No, he said, "No, I can't really. I'm a church. I can't really do it. I'm a pastor." And eventually, an opportunity presented itself. God presented an opportunity to hire somebody to invest in these kids' lives. Fast forward a few years, now they got 40 kids that regularly come to his learning center. And the one thing he said at his town hall that stuck with me was a lot of those kids that came in were either failing at their current grade level or they were levels behind and are all catching up or caught up and at least getting passing. You know, they may not be A+ students, but they're for one of the first times in a long time, especially around education, they have a sense of hope and success. And the thing he said that I think stood out to me is, you know, what these kids need is just somebody to love them and pay attention to them and invest in their lives. And I heard a lot of that as a kind of focus, both from the teachers and the educator standpoint. And we've seen that, you know, as an outsider observing the type of relationship it seems that the teachers have with the kids and the students. But then it even, I think, goes to the staff broadly, because, you know, safe to say that the compensation and benefits and everything that are a part of a smaller private Christian school probably don't quite compare to if you're jumping into the public sector.
Absolutely.
So there's a different motive getting into that. And so why, I would maybe dig into this a little bit. Why would people do that? Right? I mean, all right, I could go to public education and I could have I wouldn't say cushy, but, you know, better benefits, or I've got a pension, I've got all this kind of stuff, or I could do this. What's the motivation behind that?
That's a great observation and great question. I would say the number one factor in why would somebody make this sacrifice, especially in the realm of education. I mean, anywhere teaching's hard. I have so many people that I meet, and when they hear I'm in education, their response is, "Better you than me." You know, I never could last. You know, those kids would drive me crazy, you know, or whatever the comment is. But, you know, I think the biggest factor in why our teachers, why our principals, why our administration have made this sacrifice is that they see the student differently. They see the education happening differently than the public school sees them. When we see a child come into our school, we don't just see the child. We see a soul that is never going to die. You know, this is an eternal soul. And when you look at your work and your mission as eternal work, all of a sudden it makes a little more sense of why someone would sacrifice so much. It's because they feel like they're making an investment that's for eternity. They're not just teaching that kid something so they can be successful in some sort of monetary way, or, hey, here's how, you do XYZ so you can make a good gadget on the assembly line, or here's how you can be a good citizen while you're alive. All those things are good, but don't explain the sacrifice, don't explain the mission of what we're about. When we see a student and say, no, that's not just like a student I'm impacting now, but I'm impacting for eternity. And that then that student can go out into the world and impact others for Christ. I'm really replicating that eternal impact. And one teacher now can have eternal impact across generations. We have some teachers at both our schools that, have been there for 20, 25 years. And when you're starting to think about decades, how many students have they taught? How many students have they now changed their lives for eternity? And then those students are having kids and their own children and teaching them the Christian faith, and then their kids. And so you start to see the eternal multiplying effect of what we do. That's greatly energizing. The other piece of this, though, is too a freedom that our teachers feel that they don't have to limit the impact they have to their subject. So like, I'm teaching math, or I'm teaching science, or I'm teaching first grade. I don't have to stop there when a kid is having a bad day, or a student's family is going through a rough time, or a student is really struggling with something that has no relation to your class. I can stop. I can have a conversation with them. I can pray with them. I can talk about life, in a way that I don't have to worry about how I'm talking to them, or I guess I can't pray with them, or I guess I can't talk about faith with them. Our teachers feel that freedom to really say, my personal mission and my personal faith is aligning with what my school is giving me the ability to do, and even encouraging me to do. I think is another reason that explains why our teachers do what they do. Yeah,
it's a great answer. Great answer. We talk a lot on the business side with impact, in particular with the team that you have, and how most leaders and entrepreneurs understand that if they do it well, they understand that they're not just impacting, let's say they have 100 employees, they're not just impacting 100 people. If you're just looking at the employees, you're actually impacting probably 250, because you have a spouse, you have kids in that immediate sphere. But then by positively impacting their lives, you're also creating and cascading an effect with the sphere of people that are around them, because as their life is positively impacted, they also have the energy to positively impact their influence, their circle of influence, and that cascades. And having people who can feel like they can freely pursue that with not just the other staff, but then the kids in their lives that they're responsible for is pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I like to talk about is community impact as well, because most times when we're talking about employee, corporate stuff, you're usually talking about, well, how did you build your business and what did you? But we also like to find out community impact. Now, there's a lot of community impact you've already referred to with bringing your families together and creating a community inside of that. And this is actually something I may not know a lot about, so I'll be learning myself as well. But are there things that you do that CSAG does intentionally to connect the community, to give back to the community, to partner with the community in different ways?
Absolutely. So a couple of different things here is K to 12. So all of our students do some sort of service project, service learning in some way. They have serving opportunities. That's different for a 5-year-old than it is an 18-year-old. So at our higher levels of middle school, high school, we have a day of service every year that we go out to over 50 organizations in the Harrisburg area and do a day of service for them and impact the community positively that way. Our juniors and seniors, so this is 11th and 12th grade, they then take it a step further and they do what's called an impact project. And so one of the things that they can do internship, but they can also do service in some way. And that takes place for 30 hours across the school year, that they're working on some project sustained with an organization in some way. But then we have our elementary kids that are doing amazing stuff too. I mean, second grade, our second graders at our one school, they go to a local nursing home and they're buddied up with a friend that they once a month go to, and they will play checkers with them, or they'll talk to them, or they'll write notes to them and then take them. I drew this picture for you. That's incredibly impactful. One of the great hard things about COVID was that stopped, and we're so glad that that's back and back again. Two of my boys had that. They talked about their friends at the nursing home that they got to know, and did you know Daddy fought in World War II? And it was just amazing opportunities, and they would play checkers together and stuff like that. So there's other opportunities. Our other school does a day where the elementary students they do things around the school, plant flowers, weed beds, etc. So there's opportunities, and we intentionally say, like, all of our students that go to our school at some point this year will do a service opportunity. We really value that. And it's actually one of our profiles of a graduate that's kind of at the core of what we do, to say, we want them to serve. Very cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. I knew about some of that because my wife has joined in on some of the days of service.
Yes.
But I didn't know about the younger kids. That's really neat.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Looking ahead and thinking about vision of the schools, either the association or the separate schools, what do you see as some of the maybe biggest challenges or headwinds that you're going to maybe be facing as you look to advance the school and the mission of the organizations?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we face all the time is that idea of, holding to our mission in a changing world. That is the most important thing that we need to do, but you're always fighting to do that. I mean, you're always fighting to hold on to your mission and to make sure that you're doing your mission well, but also doing it faithfully, and not swerving from it. Continuing to partner with Christian families to provide that excellent education that sharpens minds, deepens faith, develops gifts. Those are the things that we need to constantly be fighting for. But I think there's other challenges in terms of sustainability that you're always looking for. Is, okay, how can you fund this mission, and how can you fund it in a sustainable way, generation to generation, in ways that have to be innovative and entrepreneurial and different than how our country funds education right now. And so that's always a challenge that we're looking to meet.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of those, because I know as a private school, you obviously have tuition dollars that families pay out of their own pocket to help fund the school, which is really sending their kids to the school. What are some of the other creative ways, if you will, that that you either are able to raise money or you develop on your own?
Yeah. So one of the biggest ways that really can sustain our mission is through the EITC program. So this is the education tax credits that Pennsylvania has carved out for private schools, and we can benefit from that. So this is an opportunity that businesses or individuals can redirect the taxes they already would pay and redirect them to our school. And then we have to use those dollars for financial aid. because the reality is education is expensive. It takes a lot of money to educate, have the facilities, have the teachers, have all of that, and do so with quality. That's expensive. And we want to make sure that this mission and the great work we do is accessible to families. And so our families, we always say, we don't want finances to be a reason that prevents them from coming and from having this impact. And so in order to do that, we have to give out financial aid. And this EITC program is a way that businesses and individuals can, again, this is taxes you're already having to pay. You can redirect them to assist us in assisting families and providing them an alternative for their kids to have a quality education.
And you know that I'm very familiar with those programs and work with organizations that have helped to bolster the availability of those programs. And for those of you who aren't aware, and just the sort of the nuts and bolts, it is a essentially scholarship program that you can contribute to that allows for, depending on how you contribute in the state of Pennsylvania, up to a 75 or 90% state tax credit. Not a deduction, but a state tax credit that gets applied against the taxes that you would normally owe, which is why Paul said very well that it's money you're already paying. So it's a phenomenal program. If you don't know anything about it, you can certainly reach out, but there's information on the web about it. But it's a great way, especially if in any way education is an important part in your heart and you want to give in a different way. It's a great way to be able to redirect dollars and repurpose them to a cause that you maybe feel more missionally aligned with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And would love, if anybody's interested, maybe we can put a link in the show notes or something to our webpage about it.
Yeah.
Would love to continue to talk about that with anybody. It's a great program that impacts kids in a way that people are surprised that it exists and surprised that they can do this with their tax dollars.
Yeah. What else do you guys do?
So
fundraising.
We do. So we have 2 fundraisers every year. We do a golf tournament. We do an awesome golf outing at Harrisburg Country Club. We do race.
Club's okay. as a West Shore guy.
But that's where
my Harrisburg buddies. Yeah, you're wrong.
So we do that there. We have a race for education, we call it, that the kids compete and race around a track to raise funds for our school. They love doing that. Also through our annual fund, we really try to friend raise and build relationships with donors that give again and again to our school every year through our annual fund. That helps fund the gap between tuition and operating, because tuition doesn't cover all of the operations of the school. And really trying to do that. The other thing that we started this year, which has been really successful, is a business partnership program. So businesses can sponsor us at different levels, and then we give them exposure to our over 500 families across both our schools. We give them signage in our gyms. We promote them in our musical material. We promote them on our website as business partners. And so that's a sponsorship program for businesses that we've started this year. A lot of success in the first year. So
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And this in 24 is the first year you did
that?
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think I said to you earlier, you would ask me graciously, how long do you normally do this? And I tried to be politically correct about it, that I'm supposed to stick to a script like this about this timeline, and it's very difficult to do that. But I think we are probably coming close, even though I could talk about this for hours or days, that. But I'd say maybe a closing remark. So if you're looking, anybody that's been listening that has either maybe an affinity towards something struck a nerve, is that I really want to learn more about supporting an education movement like this, or maybe you have kids that you're thinking about possibility going to this school. maybe just how would you have people either learn more about the organization, get in contact with people in the organization, etc.?
Absolutely. Yeah, we would love to connect with you. So West Shore Christian Academy and Harrisburg Christian School, we're on social media, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We have websites. Easy Google searches will find us. Christian Education in Central Pennsylvania will come up. Just would love to connect with you, show you around our campuses, and would love to bring you into the community if you don't know us yet.
Awesome. Well, Paul, it's always a blast, man.
Absolutely.
And we get to see each other a lot. So this is just another step on the track. But everybody at home, like I said earlier, is a little bit of a different flair. But if you have never had the opportunity to be a part of starting and building a school, then you may not understand why the connection is there to business. But Paul has some example. I have some separate exposure to that as well. It is extremely fundamental. A lot of business principles are there. And you talked a lot about leadership and falling in love with that. We could completely go offline about that because I'd love to hear your insight in some of that. But I hope you enjoyed today. If you have any sort of a nerve that was struck about either learning more about the school, about the EITC programs, we're going to have information in our show notes, links to some important places you can go to get more information. But as always, one of the things that we love to do is try to promote entrepreneurship, business ownership, and really impact in the community on this show. And you guys at CSAG are doing an incredible job of that. So we're glad to have you on here, and we hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next episode of the Born Podcast.